Breaking news this evening, President Trump announcing in a written statement that he will impose sanctions on Turkey in response to the country's invasion of Syria. The United States will raise steel tariffs on Turkey up to 50%, and trade negotiations will stop for the time being. Good evening. I'm Jack Watson.
And I'm Connor White. The president also says that around 1,000 troops will be redeployed to the region to help prevent a resurgence of ISIS. This comes after the president withdrew U.S. forces from North Syria last week, soon after Turkey launched airstrikes in the region targeting Kurdish troops and some civilian areas.
Kurdish forces in Syria struck a deal with Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad. The new agreement marks a major shift in Syria's 8-year-long civil war. Kurdish forces in Syria were pushed to strike a deal with Assad after facing an onslaught from Turkey after the U.S. abandoned Kurdish forces in the region. The American presence in that region had long prevented the Turkish government's efforts to control the territory of the minority Kurdish population.
Turkey plans to go forward with a ground operation into Kurdish-controlled Syria, though we have yet to see how these new sanctions will impact those plans. Now, we have Michael Furnari here to help break all of this down. We mentioned these new sanctions. That's coming out this evening. This is coming after a week or so from congressional pressures and pressures from the public to impose something like this. But how exactly will these sanctions actually impact the Turkish government?
So the number one area we're going to be seeing some impact is in the steel industry. So the Turkish government this is not the first time they've faced these steel tariffs. For the last year and a half or so, President Trump's been playing around with tariffs on steel. He's raised them and lowered them about twice this year. In the last year, we've seen about an 88% drop in U.S. imports of Turkish steel, so that's something to watch. Another thing to keep an eye on is Turkish currency. So the Turkish lira has been the worst performing currency in the world for the month of October, and that may only continue. Some people watching the markets have said that there's been a drop even in the last 6 hours.
Now, to a lot of American lawmakers, Michael, this has kind of been a head-scratcher, this entire strategy. What is the president's strategy here?
So President Trump's pitch on this has been an end to endless wars, so to speak. And I think we've seen from his foreign policy over the last few years that he's much more comfortable fighting these conflicts in a trade war than he is actually deploying ground troops. Now, with the news that he's going to be redeploying forces, it seems like he's going to be employing a strategy where he's going to be reinstalling troops on the ground, but at the same time he wants to make sure that that economic pressure is there.
Now, there's a lot of moving parts in the region itself. What is actually happening now with regards to any military campaigns, and what do you expect to see over the coming days?
So right now on the ground, as soon as those troops pulled out of those locations in Syria, we saw pretty immediate airstrikes come from the Turkish government, not only just on Kurdish troops, but on some civilian areas. And so as we can see here, the problem that the Kurds are facing really is that their population is divided in so many areas, and they're really being squeezed on all sides from these different governments, as you guys mentioned earlier. And so it's going to be a challenge. The ground operation has not quite been launched yet, but that's going to be coming. Breaking news on this in the last hour or so, Mike Pence announced that he is going to be leading a delegation into Turkey to negotiate with the government to try to negotiate some kind of ceasefire here.
Now, it'll certainly be interesting to see how all of that works out, and indeed how bipartisan-led efforts to condemn the president over this whole, quite frankly, mess. We'll have to see how everything works out. Michael, thank you so much.